we are beginning a new sermon series that was planned way before anything with the pandemic began or was in my awareness. And I've really been gifted this week with the ways in which the book of Genesis, the beginning chapter, our creation story, has just really woven together in our situation. So I'm going to read the scripture, right, and then Connor's going to play a song, and then I'm going to offer our message today. So we're going to keep John on his toes. That's what that means. So what I've done is I've taken the first chapter of Genesis and I've broken it down day by day. And so today we're embarking together on the story of the first day. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day.
My Savior left his throne above. He changed his wealth for poverty. He took my hate and gave his love. All this and more he did for me. Because he chose this lonely way and bowed before his Father's will, I can with all assurance say, my God is near and loves me still. My God is near and loves me still. He felt the storms of human pain. He felt temptation's whelming seas. He felt the tears of sorrow's rain. All this and more he felt for me. Because he knows my every stride and is acquainted with my grief, I can't be shaken in this life. The friend of sinners walks with me. The friend of sinners walks with me. His Father's every word, the law he followed perfectly, so all God's pleasure he secured. All this and more he earned for me. Because his righteous life is mine, and all his merits work in me, I am a child of God on high. I am adopted, loved, and known. I am adopted, loved, and known. When Jesus left his heavenly home, his face was set on Calvary. The steepest hill he climbed alone. All this and more he did for me. Because he died once for all time and bore the curse of death and hell. Final forgiveness here is mine. So it is finished, he brought life. Yes, it is finished, he brings life.
Oh, I've noticed this morning that mask on my face feels
Superhuman.
yes, it's very hard to breathe. And that's just such a good metaphor for me personally, and maybe this is something that you can relate to, but that in the midst of cries out that I can't breathe, and what that means right now in our society, the wearing of a mask and that momentary feeling of having it feel more laborious to breathe is just such a wake-up call for us. And when I decided to do this creation series, life was supposed to look so much different for us personally, of course, so much different for me personally, but also for the community of the land. Addison our intern was supposed to be here. We were having mission groups come out. We were starting summer garden camp. We were really building momentum with reaching new people and learning from new people who were joining in on the movement that is our community's mission of connecting people with creation and caring for creation. And then all of this just sort of blew up. It was our own small, tiny Big Bang. And so I feel like what's happening right now is we're living through the evolution of something that we're in the midst of, which is, for me, incredibly difficult, because I've noticed that when this all first began, I would look at the news and I would feel calmed. I could see what was happening with the numbers. It wasn't about it being good or bad. It was about having or feeling as though I had some sense of control. And now when I look at the news, I've noticed that it's not giving me any sense of where we're going, when this will be over, how things are going to unfold, and maybe even at a greater scale, we're seeing that in which we're trying to organize, the pieces that we're trying to order and organize as just growing. And this is not to say anything about the worthiness of those pieces. What I want to bring us into a space today is that we have many pieces to organize, and the weight that we carry as individuals and as a culture is heavy. And while we want to create space for new voices to be heard, it's also important that we step back into the story of creation to remember the story that we have redacted for so long. And we have work to do in our inner selves. And as privileged people, we have time and space to do it. And so instead of feeling a sense of guilt and panic and reactivity, what I'm calling us as a community to do today in this moment is to really step back and to step down. And to begin to listen and learn and rest in all the pieces that are swelling up around us. To me, it is fascinating, absolutely fascinating, that the biblical creation story begins with this great ordering, a segregation of the world inspired into spaces of light and spaces of darkness, bound up by containers of felt experience that we ourselves have organized into this thing called time. About this great ordering, our commentator today writes that in as much as the sun had not yet been created, this verse probably refers to a divine manipulation of light as a creative act. The sun, when it was created, augmented the already existing light. Israelites believed, just as we believe today, that light is often a symbol of life and salvation and characteristic of the presence of God. It was fundamental to creation, and pushing back the darkness was what made life possible. That line, that image, pushing back the darkness made life possible. In this scriptural framework, we understand the organization unfolding in the first verse of Genesis as an act of creating space for the presence of life, synonymous to the growth and creation of life. Our witness of this intentional pushing back of darkness to allow safe space for the proliferation of new creation offers us fertile soil to discern our own imaginative work in a time marked by the awakening of privileged minds to pains of those violently and chronically oppressed by social constructs of whiteness. It is the interpretation of this great ordering, the organization designed because of the meaning we have inserted into this narrative landscape of creation, that will be the focus of our conversation and reflection today. Specifically, we're going to focus on the ways in which our own ordering within the confines of American empire is exhausting the full expression and collaborative creativity that was initiated in this original great ordering in Genesis. Together, we seek to identify the places where we find ourselves pushing back the darkness in order that light might enter the public life of a new day. Likewise, and probably a little bit harder, we seek awareness of normalized practices that block our collective consciousness from consequences of systems empowered when we reverse this original divine demonstration of great ordering. We hold space in a muddled gray area to explore communal patterns that have pulled the presence of light so far into the darkness of the night that it has become unknowable, unseeable, even to our searching eye. I step softly into this gray area this morning with the weight of my own experience as a clergy serving embodied as a white woman in a culture that overtly prefers masculine presence in all forms of public leadership. And I am aware as my whiteness allows me to be, that the construct of whiteness provides me the privilege to manage, to negotiate, to manipulate the systems in ways unavailable to my clergy sisters of color. In my whiteness, I can dance around, sidestep, entertain the lessons so generously offered by the white men, the systems that construct them. I can laugh them off and reclaim my position when it is assumed I am the secretary when I am the officiant. I can delete emails instructing me how to dress or speak or lead a congregation. I can zone out during conversations offering me helpful insight into what I need to know or how I need to behave. I can silently rage from the cumulative burn of being born with a voice that remains unheard. And I can turn and walk back into the room without consequence because I am categorized as white. I'm sharing my experience of being in the world not as a means to shame any person or any group or to receive any response of sympathy. I am sharing my experience of being in the world because this week it has been incredibly helpful in understanding the ferocity and relentlessness of the protesters who march, kneel, and lay down their lives for the possibility of change. It has not been for me the statistics, the facts, or even really the video footage that ultimately aligns me with this uphill climb toward equality. It has been the weight I carry within a patriarchal culture so incessant, so powerful, that it pulls every bold prophetic voice into the darkness without even having been aware it was doing so, without ever feeling the fight or carrying the weight in the journey of pushing and pulling so many voices into places unseen, unheard, unknown. My point is not that my walk, my weight is the same as those who embody black and brown bodies. My point is that because I have lived under the radar of awareness constructed by those in power, I am aware of my own unawareness. I am aware of my blindness, even as I am aware that I am not aware of all that this blindness blocks out. I am aware that my blindness results in a weight that others carry, just as I am aware that I know little, if anything, of what it feels like to carry this weight. Perhaps most importantly, I am aware that my own liberation is bound up in the liberation of all people, and I am aware that I do not have enough awareness to lead. But I do have enough awareness to know that I must be willing to learn. And I am learning. I am learning that white communities are trying to offer answers to questions that aren't even being asked. That we are legitimizing, criticizing, and advising cultures on experiences that we have never experienced, let alone that we confess truly exist. And I am confessing to the intentionality in my own gripping and grasping for ignorance about these other ways of knowing and being in the world, these other ways of learning that lead us toward the darkness of our own arrogance. And I am raising up, living into the creation story, knowing that it has been retold in ways that heighten humans, that have manufactured and heightened white bodies, that we are living into not the creation story of Genesis, but our own creation story, that is a heretical mastery over the world that needs to be revised. If the protests are to add up to something grander than the sum of their parts, which is the hope and vision of the kingdom of God, we must all become aware that there are limits to our awareness. We must all posture ourselves in an uncomfortable openness, ready to learn. If we are to survive, or more importantly, if we are to become spiritually alive, to evolve toward any form of spiritual aliveness, we must embrace that awareness is the primary ingredient required for becoming and remaining alive, a status identified by our communal presence in the light. In Anne Druyn's book, which you all know I'm slightly obsessed with, Cosmos, she explains that the dawn of awareness occurred with the first one-celled organisms in the ocean. Microbes, she writes, using their tiny flagelle to swim toward the sunlight, dappling the surface of the ocean, while others sought deep refuge in the bottom. These one-celled microbes may have not known much, she writes, but they did know some things. Go to the light. Oops, too much light. Find somewhere dark. When you think about it, she says, the defining quality of being alive is the ability to adapt to your environment. And you can't do that very well, she says, without being aware on some level. This awe invoked by Druyn's scientific account of the dawn of awareness rises from the fact that our very lives are indebted to the awareness and response of these one-celled microbes' relationship with the light. Humans as a species are the result of billions of living, evolving organisms becoming aware and responding over billions of years. She writes, no one looking at microbial mat 3 billion years ago could have predicted that the one-celled organisms of life on Earth would evolve into you. That's what happens when living things and the environment interact over the course of eons, making it possible for smaller entities to unite and evolve. We are inheritors of an evolution hallmarked by fluidity and humility, an unplanned succession dependent on the awareness of our relationship to something greater than ourselves within the limitedness of our created constructs. This is the wisdom of the creation story that we return to this morning and in the weeks to come. An illumination of our dependence of a divine wind creating space for light, and an indebtedness to all life forms which adapted before us to shift and transform, creating the most peculiar, specific circumstances that gift us with life. Light and life. The two elements of creation, awareness and response, the essence of being alive. In the most recent special edition of Times, featuring beautiful phenomena, discovering nature's most exotic wonders, there is a centerfold featuring the most gorgeous picture of a cloud-filled sky paired with this explanatory blurb. Considering today's advanced technologies, you might think scientists would have a firm grasp on weather phenomena, but they don't. The process of an everyday lightning strike is still not fully understood. Some phenomena are still being explored, such as the strange electrical events in the upper atmosphere that scientists called sprites and jets. Even the study of clouds is ongoing. 12 new types of them were recognized by the World Meteorological Association authoritative International Cloud Atlas in March 2017. One reason: everyday folks armed with cell phone cameras are helping scientists discover ever more novel and unusual atmospheric events. I wonder if we were to contemplate the possibility that the construction of whiteness is an attempt to create our own world, to control and contain a story belonging to the cosmos, if we would raise the walls of our social constructs enough to see other worlds existing around us. If we began to notice that other people's pictures of what we have always seen look different than what we remember, that there are other stories holding a truth that are different than our own and equally worthy of being heard and held. Duran writes that this is the essence of emergence. Tiny units of matter operating collectively to become something much more than themselves, to enable the cosmos to know itself. The inception of the cosmos as held in the creation story in Genesis is a rich reminder that this is not a story for one person or for one community or for one country to hold. It is a foreshadowing of the coming kingdom in which hierarchy is flattened and white communities step down from a construction intent on making the creation story all its own. It is a story of wonder and awe, of searching and learning, of becoming aware of all that we are not aware of. It is a great ordering, where many hearts hold many ways of knowing, and the only extinction is of the competition for a place in the creation story. Amen.
Mother, there's too many of you crying. Brother, there's far too many of you dying. You know, we've got to find a way some love here today. Father, we don't need to escalate. You see, war is not the answer, for only love can conquer hate. You know to find a way to bring some love here today. Picket lines, picket signs, punish me with brutality. Talk to me so you can see, oh, what's going on, what's going on, yeah, what's going on, what's going on. Mother, mother, everybody thinks we're wrong. Oh, but who are they to judge us, simply 'cause our hair is long? You know we've got to find a way to bring some understanding here today.